Good afternoon and welcome to the living room. This is Barney Murray and I am your host today. And today I have with me a friend of mine, an author, um, Donnie Houston. Donnie and I go back quite a ways. Say hello to the people, Donnie.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be a guest on the living room. It is definitely a blessing for me, and I've been looking for this opportunity with excitement and vigor. So I'm just excited about the dialogue and exchange we're going to have today.
All right. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share with us some new developments, things we've talked about years ago. And speaking of years ago, check this out. I was going through uh, some of my stuff, and I got stuff, and look what I found.
What did you find? Barney, I remember that day. That was on a Saturday.
Yep. Yep, we were working at a some kind of community fair or
That's right. We were at
something.
a community event. That you are so right. I
Yeah,
remember that.
I look. You look the same. I don't.
Yep, yep. No, you look the same as well.
Oh,
I think I
sure,
got
sure.
I think I got more gray hair now though.
Oh, we both do. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. And that was probably 2013 or so, because I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
started at East Point at it was December of 2012. I think when we started. Um, Donnie and I met at a Christian Men's Fellowship breakfast. He was new to town, and it had to be a divine connection. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, for some reason you and I just of all the people that were in that room, you and I just hit it off and it seems like we had a connection. We had so much in common and it's been you've been my brother ever since.
Yeah, it's felt that's a good word, brother. Um, with all of the good and the bad that we've been through
Mhm.
together, how we've managed to overcome and still, get it together. Some of the fun times were I'd come to your office as the principal to vent and chit chat about something that was either bothering me or something that needed to be addressed. And
Mhm.
how we ended up almost having church in
well,
your
well,
office.
Barney, you remember we used to pray. You and I, and Lois used to pray over the test before we administered the test to the
Mhm.
students.
Right, right. And it was such a blessing to have someone in administration who shared the same faith. That kind of made
Mhm.
things easier because when we said, well, let's pray about it before we make a decision, that wasn't
Right.
offensive at all. We just did what we had to do. Um, and so we developed quite a relationship. And every now and then you would drop a nugget about someday you were going to write a book. And
Yes. Yes.
we heard that for year after year after year. It's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And thank God we are there.
Yes. Yes. Finally.
Yeah.
Finally, we are here.
And so the book is called My Journey from Prison Hostage to Executive Leadership. Um, so this is birthed out of a kind of a horrific experience.
Absolutely, it is. And this, although the hostage situation happened many years ago, I still remember it like it was yesterday. And in fact, um, I can remember Karen, my wife, dropping me off, and she just happened to say, she said, "Hey, Donnie, are you afraid of these guys at all?" I'm like, back then I was young and full of muscle and everything. I said, "Oh no, I could handle two or three of them if I wanted to." I never knew that that night would really test that. And
Mhm.
the thing about it, they didn't even want me. They wanted the guy that I was working with. And
Okay.
so one of the things that I believed in is treating everyone with dignity and respect.
Mhm.
And so the other person that worked with me, they didn't believe that. And so what happened was when we went to uh, let them out to take a shower or rec, what we call rec, uh,
Was this
I knew.
a jail or was it a state prison?
Oh, it was a federal prison in downtown San Diego.
Okay. Okay. And your
Yes,
position was a correction officer or what?
yes, yes. So what happened was is that I was we were about to let these guys out, and I'd had a relationship. I'd had an interaction with Cruz before, and for those of us at a certain age, we do remember America's Most Wanted. His name is Emilio Bravo and Ernesto Cruz, and they both was featured on America's Most Wanted. And
Mhm.
so one day I got to work, and I was told to go to the captain's office, and I'm like, what does this guy want with me? And I had to take Cruz to see his attorney. And so, this guy, like you're an educator, you're an IT guy, he kills people for a living. That's what he did. And
Mhm.
so, needless to say, I was a bit nervous. And so, these guys just don't comply because you ask them to do so. And so we got into a physical interaction. And then he says, hey, you're a pretty big guy. You're not afraid of me like all the other guys. And so, I was touted as the hero that day for being able to handle my business with Cruz and do what I needed to do. Now, needless to say, I went to the bathroom because I was really, really nervous. I mean, let me tell you, if anyone who knows me, I don't label myself as a tough guy. I'd much rather folks to say, hey, Don's a big guy, but he's nice and he's kind.
Yep.
So anyway, what happened on that night? He had opened the cell door without handcuffing them, and so I knew something was getting ready to happen. Cruz came out, got in my face, and I tried to bag both of us out because what I didn't want to do, I didn't want to go to his family and tell his family the reason why your husband or your father is dead is because I left him there.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's what he did to me. He left me there. And so he saved himself, and I was fighting two guys, and they both had knives. And
Mhm.
so one guy came up in my back with a knife and just said, don't move. And so at that point, that's when they took me to the cell, and they had all the bed sheets tied up and everything. And that's really where the torture began.
Donnie, you
And,
did. Am I to understand that the other officer that was with you abandoned you when they
yes,
found that he was loose?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so again, they wanted him. They really didn't want me. They wanted him. But
And I think
when
you
something
knew
like
that.
this, yeah. So, but when something like this happens, you get who you can get.
Mhm.
And so throughout the night, I mean, I was tortured and battered beyond. I mean, really, man, beyond belief. Uh, and so one of the things that they made me do was they made me read a lot of newspaper articles where they had killed people or people were missing. And then what they would do, they would take the homemade knife and they would play like Russian roulette with me. So they tore my shirt off and they put me up against the wall and they would run up against me with the knife like they was going to stab me. And then they would hit the wall. They
Mm.
would take my eyelid and open it up, and they act like they were going to, just stab me in the eye. They even went as far as, they had held the weapon to my private parts,
Mhm.
and as if they were going to, you know, do the ultimate. And
Right.
so, it was those things that, things like that just went on. I mean, all night long. And so he had, Cruz had asked me, he says, "Are you married?" And I says, "Yeah." So somehow the FBI SWAT had put a phone in the cell. They knew. And so I want you to call your wife. So I knew Karen wasn't there. I know you because I know what the protocol is. I knew
Hmm.
she was downstairs, in the warden's office in the control center. So I knew she wasn't there. And that was just when people were getting voicemails and everything. So as soon as he heard her voice, he grabbed the phone from me and started yelling and screaming, like he was going to kill me and all this and that. But I knew she was down. I knew she wasn't at home. But here's the other part that I did not mention in the book. I don't believe they told Karen. Karen got there. Now we were young kids. We were in our 20s. They told Karen that I'm not going to live. Karen said when she got there, they had my insurance papers and they had a body bag. And
Wow.
they told her, you might as well sign these papers because your husband's not going to live. Karen, Karen responds, "I'm not signing anything because my husband is going to live." You
Wow.
know, and yeah, yeah. And so throughout that time, throughout the night, the Lord started to speak to me. And this is very interesting. You know, uh, it's amazing what a woman with no education from the South that couldn't read or write, wouldn't know her name unless you told her it was that. It wasn't so much what she left me, but it's what she put in me.
Hmm.
She put the
Who is
right
she?
things in me. My mother.
Your mother. Okay.
She
Okay.
put the right things in me. And the things that she put in me was permanently etched in my long-term memory. And one of the things she says, "Hey, son, if you ever get in trouble, recite Psalms 23." Now, granted, my mother could not read or write. So the reason why Psalms 23 is so important because that's what I used to read to her, oftentimes before she went to bed. And so I think this is a pretty good time to do that. And so the Lord spoke to me and he said, "Hey, look, you know, I'm gonna get you out of here. You're not going to be hurt. You're not going to be maimed. You're going to be okay." He says, "But it's going to be a little while." And I'm like, okay. And so let me preface this now. The folks that had me hostage were devil worshippers.
Hmm.
So they had a satanic Bible in there and they was going through their satanic rituals. And while they were doing that, the Lord spoke to me and said, "Hey, don't worry about what he doing. You're going to be okay. There's nothing going to happen to you and you won't be hurt." Now, here's the kicker, Mr. Murray. He says, and I'm sure a lot of guys who are listening, you know, maybe I'm just telling my truth and my story, that they can identify with this. He says, now, when you get out, and Karen and I just got married, and he says, now, your wife want to have a baby. So when you get out, you don't have to let her have a baby. And, so I said, well, hey, God, I'm barely making it, how am I going to support another child? His
Hmm.
response was, "If I get you out of this, I can do anything, can't I?" And I says, "Well, I guess so." And he says, "Don't worry about it. I'll provide." And Murray, I had more money then and I didn't work than I do now. And I work every day. And I got what America would think is a very good paying job.
Wow.
He did he did just what he said he was going to do. He
Won't
provided.
he do it?
I
Question. Up
mhm.
until you heard from the Lord and your mother's voice, um, the whole ordeal was like 17 hours or something like that.
Yep, 17 hours.
How far into that 17 hours were you before? Uh,
I would say maybe about 2 hours into it because the
Mhm.
first hour or so is real intense. It's new to everybody. People don't know what's going on. It's really, really intense. And usually that's when they kill you
Mhm.
because I mean, everybody is hyper vigilant and things are going on. So it was about, maybe 2 hours after that. And the Lord says, "Hey, are you ready to go yet?" And I said, "No, I ain't ready to go. I'm not ready to go." He
So
says, "Okay."
what was cruising and waiting for? They've got you in there. You're the wrong guy, first of all,
Right.
but you're the sacrificial lamb, so to
And
speak,
yeah, absolutely.
somebody. So,
Absolutely.
so what do you think their plan was?
Well, you know, the plan they had wasn't really well thought out because MCC San Diego, where I worked at, is a high rise. So what they wanted a plane. They wanted to go on the media and talk about some of the things that they felt that was unfair and unjust going on in the prison. And both of them had just got sentenced to a long term sentence for killing some folks at the border and doing some other things. Now, granted, we're in our 20s and 30s. I think Cruz was 32 years old and I was 28 or 29. So we're relatively young guys with all of our lives, ahead of us and in front of us. So they wanted out. And so they thought, well, the best way for us to get out is to take someone hostage, threaten to kill them. And Cruz and them already knew that the stakeholders knew that they kill people and they wasn't
Mhm.
playing. And here's the thing. They were already doing life. So, to kill
Nothing
me,
to
what's going to
lose.
happen to them? They had, they had no axe to grind. They had no incentive. They had no incentive to keep me alive.
Right.
None whatsoever. In fact, they had every incentive to kill me.
Hmm.
They had every incentive to kill me because that's the prison culture. So they had every incentive to kill me and none to keep me alive. And so for me, as the one that's being held hostage, I had no room to negotiate. I mean, what I'm gonna say? Hey, if you let me go, they're gonna let you out because you're not getting out. Whether you kill me or not, you're not getting out. And so again, these kinds of things went on all night long. And one of the things that he says, so about 2 o'clock, he says, "Well, Houston, I'm going to kill you at 3 o'clock." And he would count the time down. And so about 2:55, he would say, "Do you have any last words?" And I'm like, "Don't kill me." And he says, "Well, I tell you what I'm going to do." And so I'm thinking, oh man, this guy's not going to kill me. He says, "I'm going to let you decide how you're going to die." He says, "I could hang you. I could stab you as many times as you want, anywhere you want with this knife, or I could make you take these pills that he had in his satanic Bible." He says, "I can make you take these pills and you'll go into convulsions and die." So, I mean, those are not real options for me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, those are not real options for me. And so I was able to keep my cool throughout the whole thing. And it wasn't because I wasn't afraid, Mr. Murray, because I was. But I knew Cruz preyed on fear. And if he could get me to cry, if he could get me to beg for my life, if I could show any signs of weakness, he got me. So I had to make sure I was cool under pressure at all times, regardless
Mhm.
of what he said, what they did. I had to at least pretend, and it was really pretend because I was. I mean, I was. I mean, I was, as they say, a hot mess on the inside.
Mhm.
And so, 3 o'clock, thank God, came and went, and he didn't kill me, but the torture continued. And as a result of that, I had to have some serious eye surgery because of the abuse that I took. And even to this day, my vision is really not that good because of because of all the abuse and things that I took while I was in there. And so what happened was is that, toward the end, he says, "Well, Houston," he says, "I'm well, let me tell you this. This just goes to show you what a good relationship I had with the guys that were locked up. Because see, let me dispel a myth to some folks. Everybody locked up is not locked up because they don't have any skill. Everybody who's locked up are not locked up because, they may be guilty. Everybody who's locked up is not, are not locked up with no heart or no sense of humanity. This guy, and I can't even remember his name now. He says, Cruz, he says, I'm not trying to act soft or be like a punk. He says, but Big Houston's a good guy. He treat us with dignity and respect. If you would, could you spare his life? Now that could have got him killed. Just
Mhm.
asking Cruz to do something like that. But that
Wow.
just goes to show you. And then, my wife, she had went down there to get some papers or something for me, and a lot of inmates had, had get well soon cards and all kind of nice letters. I hope a speedy recovery. And again, it's goes back to that lady from Louisiana that can't read or write, couldn't read or write, wouldn't know her name if it was in 15
Mhm.
foot block letters. It wasn't what she left me, it's what she put in me, you know. And that what she put in me has carried me for 59 and 3/4 years. Very, very
Wow.
well.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so at the end, Murray, he says, okay, Houston, it had to be about 1:30, you know. He says, I'm tired. He says, and I'm getting ready to kill you. And so this is when I started to break down because I knew he was serious. He took a pillowcase and he put the pillowcase over my head and he tied it in a knot. And that's when I started to cry. And that's when I said, man, please don't kill me. I got a wife at home. I just got married. I said, man, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. And he snatched the pillowcase off and he said, let's kill this N-word guy.
Mhm.
And so he charged me and he took the knife and stabbed me right in the chest with it. And I could look up and I could see him grimacing, trying to screw it into my chest, trying to screw it into my chest. And so by that time, FBI SWAT came in and they got me out. Now, here's the thing. I could show you my chest today, and you would think there would be some kind of a scar, some kind of evidence that that happened.
Mhm.
No, for some
Wow.
reason, for some, he hit the bone.
Really?
For some reason, yeah, for some reason it didn't. And again, God told me, he said, ain't nothing gonna happen to you. You going you're gonna be okay. And so they moved, they removed him from the cell and then they got me. And there's photos out there of me on a gurney and they taking me to, the ambulance and I'm going to the hospital to get checked out. And when I looked up, I saw Karen there. And, I was just touching her face and she, tears was rolling down her face and I was just touching her. And even when I got home, I got allergies and I was just putting my face in the grass. I was touching the walls. I was
Mhm.
touching, things that we now take for granted. I,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I mean, I was just so hypersensitive to touching things. And so that's when and of course, I went on to get the psychological help that I needed. And, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And so one of the things that I thought about, I said, how am I going to rebuild my life? Well, first, about 2 weeks after the hostage, Karen gets home from the doctor and she says, I'm pregnant. Now, let me let me take you back to our conversation I had with God while I was in there. He said, Karen want to have a baby. And I'm thinking, I said, hey man, I didn't think you meant like right now. I thought you meant like, I'm like, man, I'm struggling. I told him, I say, man, look, I'm struggling, man. I say, I thought
Yeah.
you meant like 5, 10 years from now. No.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
And so again, you know, Emery
So,
has been nothing but a blessing to me. She's now 30 years old. She's married. She's a commissioned officer. She's a college graduate. And I'm just so godly proud of her.
well, excellent, excellent. That's it's kind of humorous only because of, we have our own timing, and even when God says he's going to do things, we try and put a time frame on it. And
Hmm.
based on what you said, while you were going through this ordeal, Karen was already pregnant.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
so that is just a true testament of when God says he's going to take care of you, he's not
And he
playing.
did, and
But
he
the
did, and after everything kind of settled down, Karen and I had a meeting with the prison officials, and they say, hey, look, we're not going to try to deny you any monies that you got coming to you. We're here to support you and everything. And so I was at that time I was still young enough that I could play basketball pretty good. And so I was at a gym playing basketball, and a guy, his name was Kenny. I'll never forget him. And he said, "Man, you just had a baby, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I had a picture of Emery." He says, "If you don't mind," he says, "I got some dresses that I could give you." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, next week when I come, I'll pick them up." So, Murray, you're not going to ask anybody for it.
right,
So I'm walking to my car, and he says, "Hey, Big Houston, wait a minute. Hey, man, I got something for you." So he says, "Come on over to my car." He opened the car, the trunk. It had to be 20 dresses with the tags on them from like the Dillards.
mm,
He
mm,
says, "You can have all of this." And
wow,
he and I got to be good friends. And he had a friend that owned a Nike place down in San Isidro. And he says, "Hey, you want to get your daughter some shoes?" Well, again, Mary Lee told me, be thankful and don't be greedy. I said, "I'll
right,
get one." He said, "Oh no, get a couple of them." So, and then, we decided to move to Michigan. And so this is when, which is, where both Karen and I are from. And so this is when I had the conversation about with myself, how am I going to rebuild my life?
hmm,
What's next for Donnie? And so again, the Lord spoke to me and says, go back to school. And I said, I tried that and that didn't work out. He says, try it again. And so Karen, she's very familiar with the FAFSA and doing all that kind of stuff. So she got my paperwork together, and I start I started at the local community college, and I met an instructor there that was very very kind to me, very encouraging. In fact, she was the first person to tell me I was smart enough to go to college.
wow.
And yeah,
Good
yeah, yeah, and
question.
so yeah.
Um, Between your release and as you are going into the next phase of Donnie's life, um, you mentioned that you were suffering from a level of PTSD, and
Hmm.
um, how did you pull yourself together? I know God played a big part of it, the emotional and the physical damage that was done.
Oh,
How did you
absolutely.
get it together?
I I I attached myself to a good local church. Uh, Guy by the name of, well, he's a bishop now. Bishop Dennis J. McMurray uh, invited me to his church, and Karen says, "I'm not going to trust any of your friends who are preachers." I said, "No, honey." I said, "No, honey. Honey, this guy's really a preacher." And so and so we went to his church, and I think the second week we went, we joined, and he took a special interest in my spiritual development.
Oh,
And he really did. He took a special interest in my spiritual development. That really helped me. I mean, that helped me immensely because you'll go through something like that and you will ask, why did this happen to me? You
right.
know, why how come it didn't happen to the other guy? You
Hmm.
know, How am I going to bounce back? How am I going to respond? And as a man, how am I going to provide? How am I going to be the example of a man that I want to be, for my kids and my family? All these things are swirling around in my mind. And although, yeah, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I was getting, the treatment that I needed, but one of the things I refused to do is to be a victim twice. I
Oh.
could have, I could have not ever worked again. In fact, they told
Mhm.
me, this is, you never have to work another day in your life. But for me, work is more than a paycheck, and I wanted to be an example like my father was for me, a man who got up and worked and provided, uh, you know, quote unquote, brought the bacon home, um,
Mhm.
and somebody that, when my daughters looked for a husband, I can then display those characteristics in a man that she say, okay, this is something my dad did, or this is something. These are the qualities I should look for when I look for a husband.
That
How
is
he
so
treats.
huge that you should mention that, not only to the requirements of a man providing for his family, his home, and you used your father as the checkpoint. The things that he instilled in you from a work
Mhm.
ethic, the things that your mother instilled in you that help you through that ordeal. And the thing for me personally that, and those are good. You used the word. You said that the pastor um, took a special interest in your spiritual
Mhm.
development, and that is huge. In that there is somebody who um, has looked at you and saw you as a man that God could use.
Yeah.
Maybe not in your current state, but you use the word development, and that doesn't come from just attendance. That comes
No.
from
No. No.
some
No. No.
study
No. In
and some
fact,
work.
Barney, what Bishop and I would do, uh, you know, we would uh, we would sit down and I could ask him anything, anything in regards to the scriptures, anything in regards to church operations, anything in regards to how I should conduct myself in a meeting, how I should hold a meeting, what I should wear, what I shouldn't wear. I mean, I could ask this guy anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so he really honestly, Barney, he wanted me to preach. And I'm like, no, that's not for me. I said, I'm gonna leave the preaching to you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's I said that's not for me. But this guy, he took a special interest in me. And in fact, he showed me how to speak. And he taught me how to speak in front of people, what to say, how to conduct myself in front of people. And this guy I went to school with, he's only 2 years older than me.
Wow.
I went
Yeah.
to school with him, and I never knew our paths would cross again, and particularly cross like they have.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day, he's a he's a guy that when things are really getting kind of rough and under my skin, I can call and
Right.
and we can have conversations about it. And so that part of it really, really helped me because I knew I couldn't go on living like I was living before. I
Okay.
mean, I just couldn't. I
Mhm.
just I just couldn't. And so, and again, not to say that I'm perfect. I'm honestly, Barney, you know me. I'm far from perfect.
Yeah, I do. I do.
But that was the linchpin, I believe, in helping me uh, get back in the game of life.
Right. Right. And that's huge. And I'm glad you shared that, because there's your experience up, and then there was a transformation that took place that as the result of what you had gone through. And
Hmm.
so from the hostage to the executive doesn't happen automatically.
No, No,
And
it
so
doesn't.
you were saying that you, after you had kind of settled into being out, being better, what was next for Donnie? And you said that you started at a junior college. So that was, did you intend or did you enroll to be an executive, or
You
was
know,
it?
I just I just needed something. You know, the Bible says an idle mind is a devil's workshop. And so I'm sitting around the house with nothing to do all day, nothing
Mhm.
meaningful to do all day. And so that's when the Lord says, go to school. And so I went not knowing really what I wanted to do. Uh, and so I would go to, career counseling and those kinds of places. And then one day I, received a letter in the mail from the prison, and they said, "Hey, look, if you wanna, we understand, you trying to better yourself." And so they offered me what is called vocational rehab. And so I had to take a series of tests,
Mhm.
and the results of the test says, "Hey, you know, we think you would be good working with kids and being in education. If you want to get a degree in education, we will pay for it. Books, tuition, fees, supplies, gas, and we'll continue to pay you your salary."
Wow,
So I'm thinking, I can't turn that down.
that's a no-brainer.
So now again, the caveat was, well, if you don't have to take this because you never have to work another day in your life. So you don't have to take this. But if you take this, then the other is off the table. So I didn't mind working. I don't mind working. I'm not a lazy person, so I don't mind working. And I thought, hmm, if the life expectancy is 75, 76, and I'm 30 years old, and you think the federal government is going to pay me that long for doing nothing? Nah, that's okay. I'm going to I'm going to take I'm going to take the college education because that will last me a lifetime. You
Right.
know, and they offered me a little money. I didn't take that. I just figured the education would last me a lifetime,
Right.
and it has served me well. It has gotten me out of some pickles and some pinches. Trust me, trust and believe when I tell you that it's got me out of
Mhm.
some pickles and some pinches. And so, and that's what I did. And so I graduated from Grand Valley State. And so then we went to visit some friends of ours in Arizona that both he and Terry and I used to work together at the prison. And we were just, Karen never liked the cold, and I didn't either. And so we decided to move. And so we did something that our family thought was insane. We sold everything we owned, our houses and everything, and we loaded up the truck and moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and we bought a house sight unseen.
Hmm.
And and we just started from there. I had a teaching job. I just got hired at Gilbert Public Schools, and so I said I'm going to rebuild my life from here moving forward. And so shortly after working as a teacher, I decided, I think I want to go back and get an advanced degree. And so I did that. And so that advanced degree really allowed me to move move up beyond the classroom and
Hmm.
really do some things and have positive impacts on kids' lives.
Okay. That's and because of that, you provided an opportunity for me as well that that I've been able, I'm still there. I'm still there. Which is cool, which is cool. So the before we end up with talking about the executive points, your book reads as a kind of a documentary, kind of up to a point, and then it finishes up with executive. It's almost like
Leadership.
leadership and coaching and those kind. Here are some points that to better yourself if you are or want to be an executive. So that's huge. But one of the questions I want to ask, based on your experience, your prison experience, just working there, the people that you met, and you said that you had a good rapport with the inmates, that
Mm-hmm.
um, that they confide in you and talk with you. You humanized who they really
Mm-hmm.
were, recognize that. And then in the educational realm, um, with all of your experience there, and even thinking about our couple of years we spent together with teenage, high school
Mm-hmm.
age, um, did you, is there a correlation that you've seen between the two groups? You've served them both. Is there a
Yes, it
correlation?
is. It is. And it's two. One, nobody cares how much you know till they find out how much you care. And two, the lack of opportunity in education.
Hmm.
The lack of opportunity in education will normally result in somebody being incarcerated, being involved or engaged in the penal system at one point or time in their life.
Wow. Okay. The um uh, the quick fix for that, if there, if I had a checkbook and could write you a checkbook, if that's would take it, or is it, what resources based on your experience and having been serving these two groups, what do you think the answer is?
Well, honestly, I think the answer is let's scrap the K-12 education system that we have because it no longer works. It's antiquated and it's old. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the number one thing we need to do. I think we need to incorporate more real world, hands on skills and applications for students. The other thing I think we need to do is we need to encourage students who have the skill set and the interest to pursue a career in the trades. There's nothing wrong with a career in the trades.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and the final thing I think we need to do, particularly in the African American community, we need to teach our children not how to get a job, but how to create a job. Entrepreneurship. That's where the real wealth, that's where it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to get a job, but it's a whole nother to be able to create a job. And I think those are the three things we need to do.
All
I think
right.
if we I think if we focus on those three things, you would see a drastic shift in education in regards to the dropout rate would decrease. Behaviors would decrease. Time on task would increase, uh, and get away from all this mandatory testing that proved has not proved anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, those are the things. Those are the three things that I think we need to do to really rectify the situation, and that's a start.
Yeah.
And that's a start.
Yeah.
The other
And
thing
that,
is, I think, you know, and you do a good job of that, uh, mentoring young men. Not everyone is going to have a father like I did or like you did, but it's very important that we reach out to a young man who may not have that or a young woman who may not have that and fill in the gap. And again,
mhm.
we can't do that for everyone. We can't do it for everyone everywhere. But there are some things that we can do in our area of influence to change the landscape or to change the direction of a young person's life. I mean,
Yeah.
that's powerful. It's really, really powerful. And
Yeah.
you'll be paid back in spades for it.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that you and I experience, we've seen transformation with a little attention, um,
Mhm.
too many times, and to be where young people would just take a totally different trajectory because of an engaged, involved, and a caring adult. Um, and so I appreciate your 3 points on that. And that's something that we can speak to another time. In our time left, the book. There at the end of it, I think it's the last chapter, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it is a good book. It's a good read. The 5 people, product, process, profit, passion, and purpose concept. I read it, and huge transform the way people think about how do I get where I want to go.
Here's if I could, Mr. Murray, and what I tell young people that I mentor, I ask the question, here are some things you need to think about before you take the lead. Here are some things you need to think about before you take the next step in your career. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. John Quincy Adams says if your actions inspire people to be more and do more, then you are a leader.
Right.
And so with that framework of leadership, people have to understand that if you say you want to be a leader, you're asking for trouble. You really are. You're asking for trouble. I tell folks all the time, leadership isn't this glamorous thing that you see people on TV leaving the office at 1:00 to go play golf, and then they have cocktails at 3. No, it's not that. And the other thing is that you need to think about, that I tell people that I mentor that's thinking about taking the next step in their career, is that, I heard a rapper say, more money, more problems. That is so true.
Right.
Because what they're paying you for your ability to manage conflict, to manage the stress, to manage the pressures. And, one of the things that we often do when we interview people and we talk about people, for leadership positions, we ask them silly questions, but what we're really trying to find out, what's their IQ? Do they have, the intellectual quotient to do what is required to do? Mm-hmm. But the other thing I think we really need to be asking them is, what is their EQ? Because some folks can have the IQ, but they don't have the EQ, meaning that as soon as trouble comes, and trust me, it will.
Yep.
You fall apart. You yell at the staff. You go into a tizzy. And I tell folks all the time, there's nothing more frightening than a frightened leader. For an example, do you remember back? I think it was 2009, 2010. I think his name was Captain Scully, who landed this plane in the Hudson River.
Right.
And nobody died.
Yep.
Everybody lived.
Mm-hmm.
That's high EQ. That's high EQ. Why? Because I can imagine he was calm, he was collected, he knew what he needed to do, he was trained for that event, and he executed his training with precision.
Right.
So you can have somebody with good IQ, but if they don't have good EQ, you're still in a mess. And the other thing is AQ. We don't talk about AQ. There's not a lot of conversations about AQ, the adaptability. How adaptable are you? Can you deal with change? And if you're a leader, you better get used to it, because change is coming.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to be good. Sometimes it's going to be bad. A lot of times it's both. But you have to build into your plan your ability to adapt to the changing environment in your industry, whatever that may be.
Right.
So those are things that, just a few things that, I tell young people that I mentor, you know, think about these things before you take the lead. Uh, and again, and I know, you know, we always pray for increase.
Hmm.
We always do. But, and again, I tell young folks, I said, hey, look, what you really want is sustainability. It's one thing to get there. It's another thing to stay there.
Right.
And what you want is sustainability. And the way to get sustainability is don't take the elevator to success, take the stairs.
Right. Right.
And what I mean by that, a lot of times, particularly, this generation, they want to go from the mail room to the 15th floor corner office.
To the
But
board.
trust me, that's not what you want. You can't handle it. You can't handle the pressure. You can't handle the criticism. You can't handle the stress that comes along with that. So what you want to do, you want to build your portfolio in stages,
Yeah.
you know, step by step in stages. And so those are just some of the things that, I talk about in regards to, the qualities and things that folks need to think about before they take the lead. And these things are really designed for freshman leaders or those who are aspiring to be leaders,
Mm.
emerging leaders. I'm sure, seasoned folks could get a lot out of this too. But
Oh, yeah.
but really it's for the freshmen and and sophomore leaders that really thinking about, okay, what is it really like, to take the next step.
Hmm.
And also Maria, I'll tell you this, uh it's lonely. It can be very, very lonely.
I can testify to that. Yeah.
It can be very, because here's the thing, you know you cannot, there's very few people that you will be able to talk to, and I mean really open up and be candid about what's going on. Why?
Hmm.
Because, and again, I'm just speaking for me. uh you don't you could be afraid of what people, well, hey, he doesn't know that and he should know that, or he's really struggling with that, or you're unloading on people who don't even have the capacity to understand the type of pressure that you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
It's like an eagle downloading to a chicken.
Yep. Yep.
You
And
know,
that is so true, in that uh, people, and it has nothing to do with intelligence as much as it has to do with an understanding at a different level.
right,
People don't even care to know the kind of dilemma. Some want it simple. Um, and the term is that's above my pay grade. And so when people say that, they are establishing this is where I am.
right,
And to answer what we are talking about, I don't want to give it that time of day, the thought, because I just don't know. And even bigger than that, I don't really care. So you're right.
right.
The number of people that is at a minimum. And those are all good points for leadership in general. Concepts. Um, the the last couple of chapters of the book um, are huge and informative for any level of leadership. So, Donnie, where can they find the book?
The book is available on my website at DonnieHoustonSpeaks.com, and also it's available on Amazon.
Yes.
And for your listeners, I can tailor a presentation to churches, nonprofits. Uh, just hit me up on my website and book an appointment, and we can go from there.
All right. Well, we thank you for taking out this Sunday afternoon to talk with us about your experience. It is truly a testament of um, God's protective hand, your resiliency, and that with everything that you went through, and the quote that is resonating in my mind. Um, you said, I am not going to be a victim twice.
Nope,
And
not going to do it.
that is huge in that you dealt with, you had to go through to get where you are today. And if you had quit anyway, anywhere along the way, not only you and your family might not have benefited from your resiliency, but I wouldn't. And I can think of a bunch of kids, a bunch of high schools, kids who have benefited from your transformation. Um, and the thing that I love about it, when you opened up and told us about the prison experience, your relationship with the prisoners sounded like the same relationship I had when I first met you. And that's a testament to your character. And I applaud your parents for raising a good boy, a good boy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so we appreciate you and look for the book on both Amazon and on Donnie's website.
Yep.
What is it? Donnie Houston?
DonnieHoustonSpeaks.com.
DonnieHoustonSpeaks.com. Thank
Yep.
you again. And God bless you. And we'll be talking to you real soon.
Oh, my pleasure, Murder. You have a good day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.